Welcome everyone to what I guess I would call a spin-off series to the main Contenders vs Pretenders series, The Race for the 8th. Each week, along with Contenders vs Pretenders, I'll be diving into a team who I believe has a realistic shot at taking that last spot in the playoffs in a race that has been closer than we've seen in years. And to begin this series, I'd like to start out with the current hottest team in the NBA, the Phoenix Suns. Now, let's be honest here. When we heard that the Phoenix Suns were going to be invited into the bubble, we couldn't help but laugh. They had a 26-39 record, were in the bottom third in the league in terms of defense, and while their offense was good, it just wasn't enough to compensate for their lack of defense altogether. And looking past this, when we saw the schedule come out for the Suns, nobody expected them to be better than 4-4. And yet, despite all of this, the Suns have somehow found a way to beat the Wizards, Pacers, Mavericks, and Clippers, with the latter two being amongst the best teams in the league. The Suns now stand at 4-0, and are the only team undefeated in the bubble aside from the Toronto Raptors, and have slowly established one of the biggest bandwagons we've ever seen. I mean, even I'm hopping on the bandwagon. And how have the Suns miraculously done this? Well, there's no better place to start than what they're best at, the offensive end. Since the hiatus, Phoenix has found themselves to be a much better team on the offensive end, to the point where you could call them an elite team. Which is something that, honestly, I didn't expect to come out of my mouth because since the end of the Steve Nash era, the Suns have been an absolute disaster. But anywho, they currently rank 10th in the league, putting up an absurd 118.3 points per game as compared to their pre-bubble average of 112.9 points per game. They're very efficient, shooting nearly 48% from the floor, as well as shooting 37.4% from 3. And on top of all of this, they're 7th in field goals made, and 12th in the league in 3-pointers made. The Suns are no strangers to sharing the basketball, as they were first in the league in terms of assists per game before the bubble, and have kept that mentality, averaging 25.8 assists, good enough for 7th. And as a whole, they own the 4th best plus-minus in the bubble, with a plus-minus of 8. Devin Booker has been great on the offensive end, lighting it up for 28 points per game to go along with 6.5 assists and great percentages to boot. However, what we've seen from the Suns that has been different from the pre-bubble season, and if we're being honest, all of the Devin Booker era, it's that the Phoenix Suns supporting cast has been absolutely phenomenal. DeAndre Ayton has been a good running mate to Devin Booker, and while he has been inconsistent at times, like when he put up just 7 points against the Dallas Mavericks, he's played a very important role as the team's secondary scorer and leading rebounder, averaging 18.3 points and 9.3 rebounds. If he can put together more games like he did against the Pacers, especially on the defensive end where he was extremely disruptive with 2 steals and 3 blocks, the Suns are going to be even scarier than they already are. Ricky Rubio has been a staple part of their offense so far, averaging 16.5 points to go along with 4.5 rebounds and 6 assists. He's also increased his 3-point volume to nearly 2 makes per game, and this along with his playmaking and hard-nosed defense has been great for the Suns. And honestly, looking at the beginning of the season, a lot of people were hating on Ricky Rubio, but if we're being honest with ourselves, he's been the best point guard that the Suns have had in quite a long time since the Goran Dragic and Eric Bledsoe era. I mean, just last season, you guys were running Isaiah Cannon and Tyler Johnson at point guard. Come on. But moving on from Ricky Rubio's great play, Dario Saric, who had struggled quite a bit throughout the season, has finally seemed to find his shooting stroke and is playing the most efficient basketball of his career, shooting 53% from the field and 40% from 3 to go along with his defensive versatility, solid rebounding, and good playmaking at the 4 position. And how can we forget the man who has been one of the best defenders in the league and someone who is finally getting the recognition he deserves, Mikal Bridges. I mean, sure, while he isn't shooting the best from the field right now, he's still a big enough threat from the outside to where defenses can't just ignore him and provides the spacing that the Suns need. But where his value really lies is on the defensive end. Bridges has been an absolute monster, averaging 1.5 steals and nearly a block per game, but his real impact isn't even shown on the stat sheet. He has great lateral quickness to keep up with the game's best perimeter players. He uses his 7'1" wingspan to its fullest capabilities, allowing him to rip ball handlers and, more importantly, get great contests on shots from both the perimeter and the rim. At just 23 years old, he still has a few years left to grow, and I can definitely see him becoming a top tier 3-and-D player, much like Robert Covington, but with more potential on the offensive end. But the two biggest surprises for the Suns in my opinion, and I think everyone's opinion, has been the emergence of the two Camerons, Cameron Johnson and Cameron Payne. Cameron Johnson has stepped up dramatically with the absence of Kelly Oubre, putting up 13.5 points per game and 2 threes a game, and has been one of the team's best rebounders as well, averaging 8.5 per game, second on the team behind DeAndre Ayton. And out of nowhere, and I mean literally nowhere, because unless you were a hardcore Phoenix Suns fan like my man Suns Geek, or if you were a Cameron Payne stan for whatever reason, nobody knew that this guy was still in the league, and he's absolutely resurrected his career, going from Russell Westbrook's hype man to a massive spark plug and key contributor off the bench for Phoenix, averaging 11.5 points and 2.5 assists per game on an insane 54.3% from the field and 53.3% from 3. He's been absolutely phenomenal, allowing D-Book and Rubio to get some much needed rest without worrying about much of a drop off in production from the guard position. And the scariest thing about this roster is that they're 4-0, beating great teams without two key players in Aaron Baines and Kelly Oubre. And if you know me, you know how I feel about Kelly Oubre. But honestly, there's just so many good things to say about the Suns as a team right now. Defensively, they're one of the best teams in the bubble with a defensive rating of 106, which ranks 4th. They hold their opponents to just 44.9% shooting from the field, which ranks 6th, and 28.8% from 3, which ranks 3rd. They have an offensive rating of 114, good enough for 11th, and a net rating of 8, which is 3rd in the whole bubble. They're top 5 as well in rebounds per game. I can say with confidence that this is the best and most exciting we've seen the Suns play, not only this season, but since they last made the playoffs in 2010 with the Steve Nash Suns. The only gripe, and it's a very, very minor gripe, is that they average just 2.8 blocks per game, but with the defense they're playing right now, that shouldn't even be a concern, and they should just keep playing how they were playing. Now, with 4 games left on their schedule, the Suns find themselves as the 10th seed, 1.5 games back behind the 9th seeded Blazers, and 2 games behind the 8th seeded Grizzlies. And if we're being honest, Memphis definitely isn't holding on to that 8th seed with such a tough schedule ahead of them, and are at best going 1-3, but more likely going 0-4 and 0-8 overall. As of now, it's really a race between these 3 teams for that 8th spot. But now, looking at the Suns' schedule, they face the Heat, Thunder, 76ers, and Mavericks. Not an easy slate at all. However, don't worry Suns fans, cause there is hope. The Heat look like they want to rest both Jimmy and Dragic, the Thunder are without Dennis Schroeder, the 6th man of the year, and the 76ers are without Ben Simmons, but with the way Simmons has been playing in the bubble, maybe they'll actually be better because, I don't know, if you have almost as many fouls as points, you're probably doing something wrong, and your team would be a lot better without you. And there's also a good chance that with the 76ers and Mavs locked in for seeding, that they'd rest some of their key guys to preserve them for the playoffs. With this in mind, I can say that the Suns could definitely go 3-1, but if I'm being objective with myself and not riding the hype that the Suns have rightfully built for themselves, I think it's better to say that they're gonna go 2-2. With how good the Heat and Thunder have been throughout the season and in the bubble, it's just hard for me to give Phoenix those wins, especially when you consider the fact that the Suns are a combined 0-3 against those two this season. And when you factor in that Portland realistically needs just 2 wins to get into the play-in tournament, the Suns are unfortunately at best the 9th seed and narrowly missing the playoffs once again. But this isn't something to be ashamed of. The Suns have showed tremendous growth and will definitely be a team to watch out for next season. The verdict? At best, the Suns make the play-in tournament and beat the Blazers to set themselves up to get absolutely stomped on by the Lakers, but realistically, they fall just short of making the playoffs. Thank you very much for reaching the end of the video, and comment down below if you think the Suns will finally make the playoffs after a decade. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on post notifications, cause we'll be uploading at least 2 times a week. But with all that being said, remember this, Kelly Oubre is that guy.